Hey, welcome back to another video on how to set up radials for ZBrush. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create custom menus that are a bit more advanced, including how to add children brushes and how to arrange those inside your radial menu. So it's a very straightforward process, but I wanted to cover it just so that it's absolutely clear. So if you already watched some of the videos covering how to create your menus, you know that we have this menu right here, which is full of my standard basic brushes. And we have another one that I trigger with Alt-Q in my case, that has just a bunch of random custom brushes. So we're gonna arrange this and make it a little bit more useful. So let's go ahead and minimize this for a second, and let's bring in the radials here, the radials app. So I have the basic brushes and I have the custom brushes. So let's go ahead and take the My Basic Brushes and click on Edit Menu. And let me just go ahead and add a little bit more space here so we have more real estate to visualize things, and maybe increase the thumbnail size so that it's a little bit easier. All right, so these are, let's say, the parent brushes, but I could have up to 3 brushes within each one of those brushes. So that means I can have up to 40 brushes all together in a single radial menu, because you can have up to 10 parent brushes, but I'll cover that in a different video. This is mostly about adding the functionality of the children brushes. So this is a lot of fun, and it's one of those things that once you set it up and get used to using it, it's just gonna speed up the workflow so much. So in my case, I like to think about the parent and the children brushes in terms of what they do, in terms of what the behavior of the brush is and why they are used for. So in other words, by categories, right? So let's say I have my move brush in here. I would have other children brushes that are not, or that I don't use as much as the move brush in those slots, additional slots, but that are useful to bring at some point. So in my case, something like the move topological is something very useful, but I don't use it as often as the move brush, right? So this is something that it's a great candidate to leave within those children brushes. So let's do that. I'm gonna remove this. So I'm gonna click on this X icon just to get rid of that topological brush. And there are a few ways that you can add children brushes. I'm just gonna show you a couple ways, and then the most useful way that probably is the only way that you're gonna end up using, but I wanna show you that you can create more. So you notice that all the brushes have a little plus icon underneath them. So that is to create children brushes. So if I click on this one, you'll see there's a dot in here that is gray at the moment, meaning that there is a space, like an empty space like this, inside the move brush. If I click again, I have 2 spaces. And if I click again, I have the 3 spaces. And you can only add up to 3 brushes as children brushes. And this is by design. I've tested this many times, and I went through a process of designing this. And 3 is, in terms of the layout and how convoluted things could get, 3 is it's kind of like the best ratio. So I limited this intentionally to be 3, but now we have those 3 in there. Now, if I click on the brush once, I will open up the properties of this brush, or like the properties of this slot more than the brush itself. And you'll see that it has 3 brushes, 3 out of 3, and they're here, right? So from here, I can delete them, or I can add them. So this is the other method of adding the children brushes. And those are methods that I don't use as often, but they're very useful for a specific way of setting up custom shortcuts and all of that. And I'll cover that in a different video. So let's go ahead and delete all of those. And I want to show you the easiest way that you can use to add brushes. So instead of clicking once in here, or let's go back to the library in here, or adding it from here, I'm going to double click the brush. So double click will enter this editing children of the move brush, and you'll have this icon in here. So this is more familiar if you already created your main radial menus with your parent brushes, because now we can search or filter by let's go for move, and let's use the move topological, drag and drop that in there, and now we have the move topological as a children brush. So it's very, very straightforward. And just to reiterate, the way that I think about these sort of clusters of brushes is in terms of similar behavior. So anything similar to the move brush, or that I would use in that capacity, will be in here. So I'll try something like the move elastic, and potentially something like the snake hook brush would be useful as well. So let's drag the snake hook brush as the 3rd one. That's it. So now we have the children brushes, and we can click on Done Editing Children, or press the escape button, or press enter. However, before you do that, what I personally like is to match the parent size, because you can change the size of the parent as well as the children slot. Again, I'll show you another video how to further customize all of this, but I'm going to click on match parent size and then click on done editing. So now you see that the move brush has these 3 dots here indicating that we have children brushes. Perfect. Let's go ahead and test this out first, and then we come back again. So save and close, and let's bring in ZBrush. And I'm going to bring in my set of standard brushes. And there we go. So we have the empty one that we removed. But if I hover over the move brush, now I have three additional brushes that I can use. So that means I can choose my move brush and use that. I can also hover over and bring in my move topological. In this case, there's not going to be a lot of changes because they behave very similar unless I have, a different topology almost touching each other. I'm going to use the move elastic. So this one is a lot more interesting in terms of exploring shapes. And then I'm going to use the snake hook brush. This one, I'm going to enable the Sculptris Pro. And there we go. So now we have those things in there. So as I said, they're slightly different brushes, but they do roughly the same thing, or at least the way that I use them is the same thing. Now, one thing that is important to note is that as you choose any of the children brushes, it becomes your parent. Again, that is by design. So right now, because I'm using the snake hook brush, this becomes the parent. The reasoning behind the design is that if you are using the snake hook brush and then you switch to, let's say, the clay tubes, and you're going to continue to work with the snake hook brush, it's easy to just select the parent again to continue until you're ready to move on to another set of brushes. So when you select, let's say, the move brush to do the edits or whatever you want with the move brush, then the move brush becomes your parent, right? So it is dynamic in that sense, and this is persistent. So that means that if I, move away or bring in my shortcuts, this stays the same in here. And if I select the move brush, it stays in the same. So that's it. That's how you add the children brushes, and you can do the same thing for every single one of these brushes. As I said, my recommendation would be to kind of like group them together. So I'm just going to show you in terms of the thinking process of this, so that you're aware of how I like to set this up in case you want to, do something similar. For me, things like the standard brush and the inflate and the pinch, those are kind of like in the same group. So what I could do is remove the inflate and the pinch as well. Double click the standard. And then in here, I'm going to add the pinch. So let's type pinch and let's drag that in there. I will also add the inflate, add that in there. And another one that I use often is the displace brush. Again, does very similar thing, and click on done. Let's match parent, that's done. All right, so I have one brush, which is my standard brush that I use all the time, with some variants that are also useful, like the inflate, pinch, and so on. Same thing happens with things like the standard brush, right? And I can start combining things with custom brushes. So the standard brush is the one that I will use to do cuts and carvings into the model. But I also have the Geo brush, which is actually the brush that I use the most, actually. But I'm going to put it here as a children. In my real setup, the Geo brush would be here, and the dam standard would be here. Let's also use the HR Geiger cutter, which I use very often. And I also use Slash. By the way, this Pablander Slash, as well as the Geo brush, they are free on the Pablander Academy. Just go to the resources and look for it. You can just type the name and also find it in there. Let's go ahead and click on done. And the same thing goes for the clay brushes. So I'm going to remove the clay tubes, and let's go ahead and open up the clay buildup. And in here, I'm going to add the tubes, the clay tubes, as my secondary brush. I also like a custom brush that I call the clean buildup. So this is actually my main go-to brush for building volumes. The clean buildup brush is also available in the Pablander Academy, so you can also download that if you want. And let's say another clay brush that I like. Let's go for this soft clay. There we go. Done. So we now have reduced the amount of slots that we use to only 4. So we have 4 empty ones and 4 filled, and each one of those have additional brushes. So altogether in this menu, we hold 16 different brushes. Let's go to save and close. Go into ZBrush, and we now have the move brushes, or the move brush with the similar brushes here. We have the standard brushes. We have the dam standard with the cutters, and then we have the clay buildup brushes, right? So this is why this is very helpful. And if you order it or if you arrange it in this way, it will, save a lot of time. And then, almost by muscle memory, I know that if I want to move the model, I don't need to read these things anymore. I just go bring in my radial and then go towards the right to select the thing that I need. Or if I want to cut the model, I'll go to the left. I actually have in my custom setup, I have all my cutters, all my dam standard and Geo brush and all of that on the left-hand side. So I know it's just a very straightforward left movement to select the cutters. But that's basically what this is. And as you can see, this is a combination of standard brushes and custom brushes that work really well, or at least for me, for the sculpting workflow. And then I also have 4 additional empty slots that we can fill with another 16 brushes if you want to add children to those. So this is the value of adding children brushes, and personally how I like to set them up, kind of like group them together in a way that makes sense in terms of the behavior of the brush. But it's totally up to you. All right, so I'll see you in the next video.